And I think that's all you can really ask, and have such a amazing life and history that Robert has had, but to be at a really good place for the final moments. So I know that we have many people here tonight that are going to share some of their moments and some of their recollections with Robert, and it has been a joy to get to hear and to know Robert in new ways. And I hope that everyone out there and also recognizes that their relationship with Robert is still going, and that there is so much for them to discover about this man that they loved so much. So I'm going to now welcome to the stage Magie Dominic, who is going to share some of her exchanges and recollections with Robert. And from there, we will continue with some other stories. I believe we have, if Suki wants to go after Magie, and then Ross and Harvey and Augusto, and we'll maybe then we'll have a play, a production by John, and then we'll open it up as an open forum. And there's many more people that I don't want to speak. So those are just people off the top of my head, just to sort of get the ball rolling for speaking. So, Magie.
I met Bob, I call him Bob. I met Bob either 1965 or 1966 at the Caffe Cino. I don't remember when. But we've been friends since then, and never lost touch with one another. He moved around a lot, I moved around a lot, but we always had each other's phone number and address. So what I'm going to do is read excerpts from letters from him over the years. The first letter I received was 1969, and he handed it to me. My daughter was born in 1969, and people came to the apartment with teddy bears and toys and flowers and all kinds of things you'd give a new baby. And Bob showed up at the apartment with a haiku. So, and he took liberties with the syllables. So, people forget their manners watching the new baby, and no one notices. For Heather, 22769, Robert Patrick. And the second letter is 1979, 10 years later. And actually, I was up at Lincoln Center Library for the Performing Arts, going through his archives for something. And I came across a letter from me that he'd saved. And just a little interesting note, I didn't know that he'd saved my letters. And my letters are with his archives. And I have letters from him that are with my archives. And more will go there. So it's kind of special that our correspondence is together. July 1979, Dear Bob, I'm slowly reading Circle and seriously considering doing it. Bob wrote a play called Golden Circle, which is an astrological play, or based on astrological characters. I would need the best 12 young actors and actresses in Woodstock, and I know who they are, thanks to having worked with them in one of 4 productions. My only concern is whether or not they could remember their lines. They range in age from 8 to 14. I've spoken to 2 of them, and they're ready for it. And then I go on talking a little bit. And I tell them that I'm going to be in the city the next weekend. And I said, if you're in the city, call me. Thank you for the Dogwood postcard. It's beautiful. Love to you, Magie. And then this one is 1986. And a lot of these letters, I made copies because I was afraid I'd lose them. But this one is just so beautiful. Maybe you can take a picture of it later. It's 4 wings of a butterfly. And in the center, instead of the butterfly, there's a picture of a woman. And it's a gorgeous painting. And his address at that point was Robert Patrick, care of La Mama, 74 East 4th Street. Hi, I saw this, and like all beautiful, pretty things, it reminded me of you. Don't you wish you could shake that image? Much love, Bob. Oh, and this one is 1993, and I had to bring the original because I had to show it to you. This was a letter I received. So I measured it, and it's 2.5 feet, typed, single-spaced. So normally it would be like 5 feet. That will go with the archives. So I copied, and I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs, very short paragraphs. He says, "Dear Maggie, where shall I begin? I didn't deliberately leave New York, not in the way you mean, and not meaning to be out of it forever. I just got slowly squeezed out by a culture which didn't want me, probably my own fault. I landed on my feet in Atwater with incredibly kind family to whom I am very unkind in the enclosed short story. My sister has paid for me to get new teeth, which are fabulous. I am sending you the first chapter of Temple Slave, just to show you that I know and remember and regret. I love you, and that's all I'm sure of. As for the string of deaths we are living among, it makes me angry too. Everyone is being taken away. Besides the dead, you have been taken away from me by time and tides. Are you going to the Cino evening, or whatever they're calling their grubby little fundraiser? I gave them a poem to read, or 2 friends may do speeches from Kennedy's children. It's a shame no script exists of a Warhol machine, or we could have done that. But there's no Andy Milligan anymore to make the machine suit. Why don't you call Ann Harris and see what's going on with the Cino thing? Well, with this ragged outpouring, plus the short story, plus the chapter from the Temple Slave, you should have enough to keep you busy for a while. I will write more often, you do too. You know, I don't ask that it be a letter all the time, just a plain old post office postcard with any thoughts that move you at a moment. Carry them in your bag, they're great. I do truly love you, Robert Patrick, and it's Atwater, California. And this was either the night off or the day after he received the Robert Chesley Foundation Award for Lifetime Achievement for Gay Playwriting. All went well with the awards, the awards ceremony went fine. Quentin Crisp was my date, and Paul Cadmus, the painter, a boyhood idol, was present. My acceptance speech, The Persistence of Puritanism in the U.S. Gay Subculture, stopped the show 5 times. Then 6 editors wanted to publish it, none willing to pay. I remember why I left New York and quickly left it again. Hope all was well with you. Get paid. Right. And then the next letter, and I didn't save the envelope, unfortunately, but I'm pretty sure I know when it was. The next one was when the first plaque went up on the Caffe Cino, which was 2008. I got an envelope in the mail with a blank piece of paper and this piece of ribbon, which is absolutely gorgeous. It has a painting of Our Lady of Perpetual Help on it. It has little silver crosses, and it's beautiful. When I opened it, I thought, my God, that looks like something Charles Stanley would wear. And he'd come into the cafe some night, and he'd have that attached to his belt. So I wrote him, and I said, thank you, it arrived. I said, you know, it reminded me of Charles Stanley. And he wrote back and said, that's why I sent it. And the next letter is just after Poe closed. Poe was a lot of you may already know, Poe was a restaurant that was in the Caffe Cino site, and it was there for 25 years. Their rent went up really high. They had to close. And a little Indian restaurant came in there. The letter that he sent me is written on a scrap of paper, like something you'd have by your phone, like a scratch pad. and with no dear Maggie, nothing, just, I cannot write sensibly about your beautiful poem. There is no one like you. Your poem joins my very limited file of literature about Joe and his cafe. Maybe Atlantis isn't at the bottom of the sea. Maybe it just closed and became an Indian restaurant. Love, RP. And I'm going to jump out of order. There are two more. And this was an email. And, we were corresponding, regular letters and email. This was a few weeks before he passed away. This is April 2nd, 2023. 4:22 p.m. This is from him. 4:22 p.m. Maggie, do you know if Cantilever Rainbow and Monuments at the Cino were Krause's and De Prima's first ever dramatic productions? Me, 4 minutes later. I just happened to come home and turn on the computer. Hi, just got home from freezing bitter winds. Posted 2 photos of your friend's art. Check Facebook, just sent them. Read De Prima. Monuments was not her first production. She did one in 1965. Don't know about Rainbow. The next email from him is 2 hours later, and the reason he didn't reply right away was because he went directly to Facebook and started posting the pictures I'd sent him, probably. 6:10 p.m. I'm sorry I didn't make myself clear. My query was meant to be, did either Krause or De Prima do plays elsewhere before they did them at the Cino? I'm trying to get together a list of 1, playwrights who did their first stage work there ever, people like Lanford, Billy Hoffman, John Guare, me, or 2, writers who had worked elsewhere before, like Paul Foster, Tom Innes, Sam Shepard, Jean-Claude. 6:16, 6 minutes later, Bob, writing to me, it's the Cino I'm hoping to characterize. Well, what I'm looking to make is a why should you know about the Cino statement. So I guess I'm mostly interested in people with connections to, quote unquote, underline bold, known theater. That is, Sam and Lance won Pulitzers, Tom won a Tony, Bill Hoffman and John Guare were nominated, George Hammershon and I hit Broadway. Michael funded Circle, Doric founded Tassos, Tom O'Horgan influenced Fosse and Peter Brooks, Andy Milligan is a major cult figure. But writers as good as Katukas, Ruth York, David Starkweather, Joseph Bush, and Ronnie Tavell are, quote unquote, inconsequential. So what he was trying to do the last weeks of his life was establish a new Caffe Cino page in the website, a new statement that he could publish to people, letting them know that not all the brilliant writers, not all the great writers at the Caffe Cino won Tonys and Obies and Emmys. There were other brilliant writers who have gone unrecognized, and he wanted them brought to the forefront. That didn't happen, but it was a fantastic idea and needed in a way. So this letter was last year, and I was working on a new manuscript, a new book, and in it I talk about my childhood growing up in Newfoundland. And Newfoundland has very long winters, very short summers. I went to a nun's school for 12 years, very strict upbringing, but the geography of Newfoundland is gorgeous. So I remember those days, and I wrote to him and said, told him what I was doing, and I said, do you remember your childhood days growing up in, I think he grew up in New Mexico, his early years, and I said, what was it like for you, if you remember? And this is his reply. Well, since you ask, I mainly remember myself being alone, at a movie, in a library, walking, stopping to look at lights and shadows on buildings and objects, lying on my bed reading a book while listening to classical music, standing stunned, looking across a prairie or down a small town street or a sunset. I didn't understand anything, and there was no one to explain it to me. George Bernard Shaw and Gene Kelly were my friends. So it was peaceful, yes, except for the loneliness. So no, overall, I don't miss it. People were something I watched rather than interacted with. And yes, it does seem to me they were kinder, quieter, more aware of each other than they are now. But the books, which were my only source of information, told me even then that in private they were cruel and cowardly. The first person who ever showed any interest in me whatsoever was you. When I said something about myself and apologized, and you said, with what sounded like real interest, "No, please, you never talk about yourself." So, don't do that, Maggie. So that happened in like 1965 or 1966, probably some quiet evening at the Cino. And we started a conversation and a correspondence that continued uninterrupted for 57 years. So there you go. Yeah. Thank you. I just have to put it back together again now.
That's the archivist.
Sorry?
The archivist in you is maintaining all the documents.
The archivist?
Archivist.
Sorry?
Thank God for
Archives. Archives.
Oh, archives, right. These are all going into the archives, right. But some of them are so precious, I'm not ready to give them up yet. Yeah, but that's pretty special that our letters will be together. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Sorry I'm so clumsy getting it together.